So happy to be here. So happy to see everybody. It's such a beautiful day outside. And while the world is doing its thing, we still have to find a way to keep moving. And that's kind of why I'm going to talk about heroes today. But part of the thing about heroes is there's a problem, right? Heroes promise so much. And we all want to go on an adventure in some sense, and heroes kind of promise us that. They show us what an adventure looks like. And we really do. We crave adventure at some level. And the thing about adventure is that nothing creates meaning in our lives like going on an adventure. Now, it's interesting to think about the word adventure because the word adventure starts with the word adverse. So adventure is not going to Disneyland. Right? It's not having fun. It's being tested. And when we've been tested and we pass this test, there's more meaning in our lives, whether it's I'm dealing with depression and I'm finding my way forward, or I've lost somebody in my life and I'm finding my way forward, or I've got a huge setback in some challenge in my life, and so I'm picking myself up and putting my pants back on and trying to move forward. So when we watch another person emerge victorious from their adventure, it just lights something up in us, right? We see something in ourselves, in that person that's out there. And it transforms. When the person comes through their adventure, they're not an ordinary person anymore. They've got this glow about them. They have this thing. People want to talk to them. People want to know what their secret is. People want to know, how did you do it? What was it like? So there's this almost superhuman glow about certain people. Before we started the sermon today, I was talking to our choir and the folks making all of this happen, and we were talking about, did you ever meet Joe Biden, right? Because I think if you haven't met Joe Biden and you live in Delaware long enough, if you haven't met him yet, they give you a ticket or something. It's like a law. You know, it's a small state. Like, why haven't you met him yet? So we were talking about what's it like to be with him, what's it like to just talk and see with him. And so I talked about two presidents that I saw. I never got to see Joe Biden yet, so I'm probably going to go to traffic school. But I did get to see two presidents. I got to see Jimmy Carter when I was really little. And he was driving down the street in his motorcade, and my dad rushed out to take a picture, and two big Secret Service dudes just came out of nowhere and just hustled him back to the curb. That's pretty much all I remember about that. I'm like, wow, those guys, they picked Dad up and they just moved him. But the other person, the other president I got to see and that we were talking about was Barack Obama. And I got to see him before he was president at Widener University in a leather jacket with the rain just dumping on him. And he just electrified everybody. And it was amazing. And he had that glow about him. He had that thing. Everyone's like, you are our hero. Now, there's also a problem with that. Maybe you've heard the term that gets bounced around in the newspaper called Green Lanternism, which is a very strange term because it has to do with a superhero. But let's think about it like this: we elect people to make laws for us and to be our presidents, and we think that somehow they're going to pull some big magic wand out of their pocket and go, okay, it's all fixed. And when it's not all fixed, we get really upset. We're like, why isn't this stuff all fixed? We have this sort of hero complex we put on leaders, right? We make them into these magical people. And then when they don't pull through, everybody gets very upset. Now, I want to talk about a different sort of hero, though, in this way. And this isn't really the people that are wearing the capes and the flashy suits and all that. But I want to talk about heroes in a more ordinary sense, and that's just the sense of being a role model. Who do we look up to? And in some ways, more importantly, right, given the room that I'm talking to, I'm not talking to a bunch of freshmen in college right now, and I'm not going to tell them, wait till you're in charge and then you get to be a leader. I'm talking to a bunch of people who have been and are leaders. So you know what it's like to be a role model. So let's talk a little bit about that too, because we definitely have this sense that there are two types of heroes out there. And there's probably lots more, but I want to talk about two types. And here's the one. The one is you see this hero and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so blown away. You're so amazing. How could you do that? And you're just sort of in this state of aesthetic arrest. You know, you know what the root of fan is fanatic. It's not follower, it's not admirer, it's not appreciator, it's not student, acolyte, or anything else like that. It's fanatic. And certain heroes make us like fanatics. They make us very unfree. They leave us imitating them, copying them, but ultimately they leave us passive. We're sort of worshipful. They don't really spark us on our own journey. They don't motivate us into action to take our own adventure. We're just so blown away by how great they are, we just remain passive. There's a film out that's making lots of headlines right now, a big science fiction movie called Dune. And the writer of those books, the Dune books, Frank Herbert, wrote about a very specific type of hero, and this was his attitude about heroes. Very different than Joseph Campbell's. Joseph Campbell's saying, you got to be the hero. Like, he's talking about the hero's path, right? How am I going to walk that path? Frank Herbert's saying, be careful of heroes. They leave a lot of wreckage. So there's a difference between being the hero and following the hero, right? There's a difference between being like a fanatic and somebody who's inspired. So what's the difference? I might see one hero again, like if Dalai Lama walked in the door, I'd be pretty tongue-tied. I'd be like, dude, how do you do it? Like, I wouldn't know what to say. If other heroes walked in, other heroes I know, I'm like, how do you do that? And I want to know because I want to do it. So the second type of hero is where we see somebody come off an adventure and we're like, that's awesome. How did you, I want to do that. How do you do that? I want to do that, right? Sometimes I have students come up and they go, have you ever seen the Dead Poets Society? And I laugh because I'm like, yeah, that sort of like set the tone of my entire career. So definitely saw it, right? And that's when I saw, and again, the hero doesn't have to be real. You know, when I saw Mr. Keating, Robin Williams doing his thing, and I was a grad student, I was like, that's something like that. I don't want someone to have to die at the end. You know, I don't want that kind of drama like in the movie, but I want to do something like that. So there's a type of hero that motivates us out of being passive, right? Out of our comfort zone. There's a type of hero that inspires us to set us on the hero's path, to put us on an adventure, which also means being tested, right? Again, we're going to talk about why is that? Why do some heroes get us so jacked up while other heroes just sort of leave us sitting there? And what happens when we become somebody else's hero? What happens when you become someone's boss that they look up to, someone's teacher, someone's grandparent, someone's older sister? What happens when we have to play the role model? Everyone here has done that. Now, some of us might have played the hero for our parents. Some of us have lots of kids right now playing the hero for us. Right? Like I've got my daughter, oh my God, she's so smart. She's a PhD student at Northwestern. She's just going to, she's going to take the ivory tower and own that. So now what happens when we make our kids our heroes? There's something about, I'm asking you to live some part of my life for me if I'm asking you to be my hero. Right? So let's think about that for a second. What happens when we make somebody else our hero, our kids our hero? How is it that we become a hero? And so here's a question I want to throw out here, and I'm going to guess you guys know the answer. When you are in the position of being a role model for someone else, or you're around somebody that you know actively looks up to you, there's this feeling of weight. Like you got to live up to it, right? There's something you feel like you have to carry. You got to be careful when you're around people that admire you. We sort of know that. We sort of know that if I do something to break this person's admiration, it's not only going to mess with my relationship with them, it's probably going to mess with them. So there's this pressure to carry this thing. So what are we carrying, right, when we're being the role model? What's that thing we got to live up to? What's that why does it feel so good to take the role model off sometimes? Oh man, I walked by the teacher's lounge one time in high school and the door popped open and the language that came out. I'm like, were those people educating me a little while ago? Because dang, I didn't even know they knew those words. Right? We were saying them all the time. So there's this thing, it's heavy, and sometimes we got to take it off and have a drink or smoke a cigarette or whatever it is, because it's heavy to do that. What are we carrying? Why does being a hero come? And this is other thing too, right? It's not all pain, right? Because people go, oh my God, I look up to you. Oh my God, you did something that changed my life, and you feel awesome. Because it's meaningful. Like I made a dent with somebody. I helped somebody get somewhere. That made my day. Right? I bet a lot of people in this room have had someone come up to you and go, you said this thing to me sometime and it really helped me out. And you're like, what was it? You said this. And it's like, that's pretty good. I'm glad I came up with that. Right? So there's this thing. So there's a sense of really being special to somebody. But also feeling kind of heavy about it too, at the same time, right? So let's talk a little bit about what we're carrying and also what we're giving away. What am I giving away to my heroes that's really mine? What makes them so special I just can't get them out of my head? Whether they're fictional. Anybody ever been obsessed with a fictional character? You just can't get them out of your head, all right? What are they carrying? So now, this is what we are carrying, and this is what heroes carry. They carry potential. When I look at when I look at somebody do something amazing, go, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm just giving my potential away to that person. I could never do that. They can do that. Wow, they're so awesome. I just can't get over them because I've given them something that's mine. I've given them my potential. So it's not so much about them anymore. It's that I've given them something that always belonged to me, and now I can't get over the fact that they have it and I don't. But I've also made myself, I'm so much safer now. Whew. I would much rather just sit back and watch this person just brave all the slings and arrows, because now I don't got to do it. One of the things I like to talk about a lot, so I'm going to shift gears for a sec and then come back. You know, as professors, we like to just go round and round. I talk about this concept called the shadow, called the psychological shadow. Not my concept, Carl Jung's concept. For about 100 years. So I'm going to just throw a couple questions out and you'll sort of get the idea. I know I'm in a room full of helpful people because I'm in a room full of Universalist Unitarians, right? So a lot of people here are very helpful, right? I'm very helpful. I like being helpful. When I'd help my grandmother, she made me feel really good about it, right? When I help my wife, she makes me feel happy about it. How many people here have a real hard time saying no when someone asks you a favor and you don't have time to do it? You don't have time to do it. You don't really want to do it. But if you don't do it, like, I don't know, they might not like me as much, right? They might not value my friendship as much. They might not think I'm like this person that I want them to think that I am. as much as there's some fear. Helpful people who are trained to be helpful because being helpful is good, put their ability to say no into their shadow because it's threatening. The other thing helpful people do is, ironically, we never ask for help. Like, we're dying, we're in the weeds. I'll finally ask for help, and a friend will go, when did this happen? Oh, a month ago. Well, where were you? Why weren't you letting me be a friend and help you? What's with this whole self-containment thing you're doing? So helpful people put their ability to ask for help into the shadow because it's socially risky. Kind people. You USMCs, we're kind. We're nice. But sometimes if we got to deliver like hard news to people that might hurt their feelings, it's not so easy. Being kind, especially to people that are older than you, or being truthful, I should say. How many kind people here find it difficult to tell people difficult news? It's very hard. Sometimes I got to tell a student, I'm like, it's too late, dude. I can't help you anymore. And it kills me, right? But it's like, I got to be honest. So now the shadow is a child's defense mechanism. It's what we all learn to fit in. If we're in a helpful family, then you better be helpful, right? If you're in a family full of athletes and you want to write haikus and do watercolors, it's going to be a rough ride, right? If you're in a family full of painters and poets and you're all about hockey, it's going to be a rough ride. So we put these little pieces of ourselves away. So I'm helpful. I won't say no, right? I'm kind. I won't be mean. Or what's another one? I'm loyal, right? I'm a friend. But if you go do something with somebody else, I'm going to flip out, right? Because I'm also kind of a sidekick. So each of our strengths, if you're really organized, how quickly do you fall into micromanagement? Right? If you're really imaginative and creative, this pointing at me, how overly sensitive can you be sometimes? If you show your work and someone goes, yeah, it's okay. And you're like, okay, if I had a gun right now, how dare you? Give me mediocrity. So we have this shadow. And Jung would say, you can show somebody their shame shadow, their personal shadow, pretty quick, and they'll go, all right, sure. But here's the other thing we put in the shadow, our potential, our genius. Freud said, I can show somebody their shadow, or Jung said, I can show somebody their shadow pretty quickly, but to show somebody their genius, they will fight you every step of the way. Why? Imagine a 16-year-old. Imagine you're 16 and you go into the fortune teller's tent and you look at her crystal ball and she says, wow, you're going to cure cancer, like in your lifetime. And you're like, really? Yeah, you're going to cure cancer. Like, I hadn't even passed algebra yet, but that's cool. All right, so I'm going to cure cancer. Rock and roll. Tell me some more. Well, you go to school and you got to go through college and you go through medical school. I'm like, all right, but I cure cancer, right? He's like, yeah, you cure it. Let me look a little closer. Okay, so you're in your lab by yourself and you die alone, but later they find your notes, finish it, cure cancer, and you get the credit. And everybody knows your name for the rest of their lives, except you're dead. You don't want to cure cancer? A lot of 16-year-olds will be like, can I shell insurance instead? Can I go do something else, drive a bus maybe? That's hard. It's hard to live up to your potential. We have to suffer for it. We know this already because we've been doing it. You got to suffer for it. People are going to ask you, who do you think you are? Who do you think you can do that? You think you're better than us? There are so many things. And then failure. What if I fail at my potential? Potential is the scariest thing we have. And it's the thing we're the most afraid of. So when a good hero comes along we just, boom, stick it right on them. Go, oh my gosh, you're so awesome, and now I'm safe. Right? So I don't have to worry about my potential. In some cases, in some ways, it really is good to be very worshipful of fictional people or deities or whatever it is, because we all have a human need to dump adulation onto something. But when we dump it onto a person, it puts a lot of responsibility on them. I've heard Jungians say, don't heroize anybody you know personally. If you're going to turn somebody into a hero, make it somebody you never meet. Because if it's somebody you live with or work with, you're mixing levels. This is a mythical person that you can put your potential on. This is a real person, right, that's got to carry it. So what happens when we have to do this? I became really interested in the gold shadow when I was teaching interpersonal communication with parents and kids. And as you well know, a lot of the students at UD are pretty high-powered people. And their parents are pretty high-powered people too. So I would hear things like, oh my gosh, my mom is like this amazing lawyer, or oh my gosh, my dad runs this amazing business. And I'll say, well, that's great. And I'm like, do you think you could ever do that? Oh no, I could never do that. What do you mean you could never do that? Like, you got this person's blood's flowing through your brain, flowing through your veins. If not you, then who? But they're like, I could never do that. Oh, I could never do that. Right? I had a student, and she did not want to go to the Stone Balloon with her dad to go have a beer. And I'm like, you're 22, right? You can have a beer with you. I can't have a beer with my dad. It's like, why? He's my dad. I said, you know, if you can take him off that pedestal and let him be a man, you can actually grow up. Because if we leave our parents on pedestals, it's like, oh my God, my dad, the savior of all chaos in my life. Even when I know exactly what I need to do, I call him up and he says, yes, honey, that's what you should do. And now I'm okay. Right? My mom, the ever available and abundant fount of emotional support, of financial support, of all kinds of support. She's never closed, right? That's a lot of pressure. And I also saw parents doing the same thing to their kids. You don't make the mistakes I made, honey. I want you to have all the opportunities I had, or I didn't have. I want you to finish the adventure I couldn't. So parents and kids project all this gold onto each other, all this potential onto each other, right? And it makes a mess of things because the parents want their kids to be this shining beacon, right, of hope, of all the stuff they didn't do. And the kids want the parents to be these stalwart pillars against chaos, right? And we're not treating each other like human beings. We're treating each other like functions. So, what does it mean to have a hero? Part of it means to figure out what gold I've projected on that hero and take it back. What do I think is so amazing about this person? Two people that really blow me away are David Byrne from the Talking Heads and Barack Obama, because they never lose it. I think for various reasons they're so calm, and I'm not. And I want that, right? So instead of going, wow, how do they do it? It's like, all right, how do they do it? How do they chill? How do they deal with things? How do they make themselves more calm? You might have had somebody in your life, and I'll ask you this, where for a while you might have been a pretty big deal to them and really helped them out. And they were like, oh my gosh, you changed the whole game for me. Thank you so much. And then you run into them like maybe 4 or 5 years later, and they're just like, hey, they're super casual. Like, hey, how you doing? Oh, it's good to see you. And you're like, oh, I was like sliced bread to you, man. What happened? Right? They took their potential back. Right? If you're a hero and then one day you're not so special to that person, it means you did your job. Right? That's what it means. Not like, oh my God, what did I blow it with you? It's like, no. To be a hero, to be a leader, to be a role model obviously means you got to develop that person. You can't just tell them what to do. I have to give them something too. I have to develop them. And the way that leaders and role models develop people around them is we carry their potential for them. We carry it for them. And then as they become more confident and more competent in whatever it is they're trying to do, we give it back to them. Right? Now, sometimes you might have met people like this. I know I have, being a grad student and being a professor. I had a professor, and she wanted every single compliment she could get. And like, we were lowly grad students. I'm like, I'm a worm. Why do you care what I think? She wanted all these compliments. She would never give any back. She just kept all the gold. She just wanted to stay special, be a big deal. She wanted all that worshipfulness, but she didn't develop anybody. The more you worshiped her, the more she loved you. The more you were like, well, what do you think about my ideas, the less she wanted to do with you. Right? So I have to carry people's gold. And then when they're ready to take it back, I have to give it back to them. Sometimes we try to give it back too early. We're like, you can do it, just jump, come on, you can do it. And they're like, I can't. It's like, all right, I got to carry it a little longer then. Right? Sometimes, again, we were talking earlier that I think the word launching your children now, it just doesn't really work. It's more like, I don't know, it's a process. It takes time. They go, they come back, then eventually maybe they go and then they just go. But it's about carrying potential and letting it go and giving it back. Are you ready for this yet? No, not yet. Okay, I'll still carry this for you. Are you ready for it yet? Okay, now you're ready for it. Okay, now go do it. Right? So part of our hero problem is that we have to take back the gold we project on the people we admire. I have to look at a hero like a rung on my ladder that I'm trying to climb. Every hero is the next rung. Every piece of potential is the next moment of growth that I'm trying to get to. So ask yourself, who do you admire most? And what is it about that person? Right? Whether they're fictional or not. My hero, when I was a kid, was definitely Han Solo. He was confident, he had a fast car. He was everything I was not when I was 10 years old. So, and I needed him at that time. But it was that confidence. He didn't care how far he got in over his head. He was just going to talk his way out or figure it out. And I come to really admire that. Who do you admire most? What's the thing you admire about them? And how can you take it back? How can you start embodying it, right, in some small way? How can I see someone else's projection of gold onto me and see that as a responsibility for me to carry that person? Not to get flattered by it, not to get my ego pumped up by it, but to see that as kind of a sacred charge. Because if we break someone's admiration for us, and it happens sometimes when we're human, if we break someone's admiration for us, we not only damage their relationship with us, we damage their relationship with themselves because we just broke their ability to strive. They saw potential in us. They were in a relationship with us. We're trying to carry it, and we broke it because we were callous or whatever it was. That's part of what we're worried about. That's part of what makes it so heavy. But again, somewhere along the line, we have to get back to it. And it's a delicate balance, carrying gold, giving gold back, finding gold on your hero and going, okay, that's really mine. I just got to figure out a way to make it real and not something I'm projecting. So this is really one of the I see this as a true challenge of leadership, of which we have a pretty big crisis in, probably worldwide at this point. is not just to inspire others to follow our ideas, but to transform and develop others so that they can become more than they were before they knew us. So our task comes down to three things, and I'll close with this. First, identify whether a hero inspires action or worship, and decide which is it you want to do. Second, identify the gold you're projecting onto your hero. How can you find your way to live out this potential? Your individual, creative, and sustainable way. And last, realize that when you're carrying another person's gold, be conscious of what that means, and also be aware of the need to give that gold back. So thank you so much for giving me this time with you today. Blessings be.